Hey everybody, Casey here with Life Abstract Gaming, and this past Friday saw the release of the newest sequel to the most iconic game franchise in the world, Super Mario Odyssey.
Here we go, off the rails. Don't you know it's time to raise our sails? It's freedom like you never knew. Don't need bags or a pass. Say the word, I'll be there in a flash. You could say my hat is off to you. Oh, we can zoom all the way to the moon from this great wide wacky world. Jump with me, grab coins with me, oh yeah. Time to jump up in the air. Jump up, don't be scared. Jump up and your cares will soar away. And if the dark clouds start to swirl, don't fear and shed a tear, 'cause I'll be your one-up girl.
Nintendo's Mario, or Super Mario as he's sometimes known, is the de facto poster child for video games overall. His recognizability throughout the world is only edged out ever so slightly by Namco's Pac-Man, according to the Guinness World Records 2010 Gamers Edition. But unlike Pac-Man, the Mario franchise has remained a strong staple in the gaming industry ever since its inception. Ignoring 1981's Donkey Kong, which starred the first iteration of Mario, the first actual Mario Bros. Game was released in 1983 and introduced several of the concepts and imagery so heavily associated with the games going forward. Since then, the number of Mario games that have been released is staggering, and ranges in genre like puzzle games, board games, arcade sports, and even RPGs. But platforming has always been the hallmark of the franchise, and Nintendo has shaped the entire genre for decade after decade with each mainline Mario game release. While there are several Mario platformers that carry the name Mario Bros., there are some I don't actually consider to be part of the main lineage of the game franchise. The main titles as I see them are Mario Bros., Super Mario Bros. 1, 2, and 3, Super Mario World, Super Mario 64, Super Mario Sunshine, Super Mario Galaxy 1 and 2, Super Mario 3D World, and now Super Mario Odyssey. I have to admit, I'd fallen out of love with the Mario franchise over the years. While Super Mario World on the SNES was actually the first video game I'd ever owned and completed, and is still one of my favorite games of all time, by the time I'd gotten to playing Super Mario Galaxy on the Wii, I was burnt out. Though Galaxy was critically praised, I just didn't get what the fuss was all about. I completed the whole game and couldn't really claim to have had fun, so I took a break from the franchise and skipped almost everything after that. But there looked to be something different about Super Mario Odyssey, so I decided to jump back in. Before I dive into my impressions, I just want to give a special shout out and thanks to one of my best friends, Chris, who let me borrow his Switch and a copy of the game to make this video. The first thing I noticed when starting the game was that it was very familiar, even though it had been about a decade or so since I played a 3D Mario title. If you at any stage in your life put in a bunch of time into one of those games, you're going to feel right at home. Mario's jumping abilities are still rock solid, and half the challenge of the game is knowing when and how to use them. The newest mechanics in Odyssey, though, revolve around a character named Cappy, who is a hat spirit that has taken the form of Mario's signature hat. Instead of punching and kicking, Mario can now throw Cappy onto enemies and objects to possess them himself, granting him their abilities or modes of traversal. But I'll go into the possession mechanics a little deeper later on. The reason Mario has teamed up with Cappy is because Bowser has once again kidnapped Princess Peach, but in addition to that has kidnapped Cappy's lady Tiara, while on his quest to gather a bunch of items for a forced wedding. While this trope is pretty much a running joke at this point, I still found the situation to be pretty entertaining, and Bowser sporting a pure white tuxedo and top hat is actually pretty cool. A group of new characters called the Broodals act as Bowser's wedding planners, as well as mini-bosses on several of the areas. I liked the design of these characters, and most of their fight mechanics revolve around dealing with their hats, which is a major theme of the entire game, but overall, none of them were very challenging, at least not for the amount of screen time that they get. You can face them more than once with slightly more difficult mechanics than the last time, but it's still a bit too easy to take them down with minimal effort if you know what to do. There are a collection of other area-specific bosses, however, that are actually more fun to fight against. While I wouldn't call those fights especially challenging either, they were just a bit more involved and I appreciated that. They were usually a huge spectacle as well, which I don't ever remember being a big thing in Mario games of the past. Beating bosses, however, isn't what the game's about. In Mario, generally you're supposed to get from point A to point B, and there are a million different obstacles in your way. In Super Mario Odyssey, that's all still there, but the added goal of collecting Power Moons is truly addictive. The platforming mechanics are the best they've ever been, and they'll help you get to moons that are sitting out in the open, but the greater majority of them are actually hidden in the environment, in puzzles, area-specific quests, or even in dialogue with other characters. The possession mechanic that Cappy grants you is what truly elevates the gameplay into something new for the franchise. In the past, Mario could gain a couple of new abilities by grabbing power-ups like the Fire Flower or the Cape Feather. Those items are actually gone now because Mario no longer takes any specific traits, he actually becomes that particular creature. Possession is absolutely crucial to getting through most of the game, and certain levels have a ton of sections to navigate and secrets to find catered around possessing a certain enemy or object. Figuring out what to possess and how to use them effectively to get to the area you want to be in is a gameplay loop that I never grew tired of, because there's always something new to control and various ways of having to put those controls to use. If you miss the fact that powering up Mario actually changes his outfit, you're not going to be disappointed, because you can actually use the coins you collect throughout your playthrough to buy different outfits that completely change Mario's look. It's actually pretty fun to dress him up and mix and match clothes. Though none of the clothing grants any special abilities or bonuses, wearing the right thing in the right place will usually grant you access to a secret room, which usually gets you to a secret power moon. I can't stress enough just how much there is to do in each level. While some seem to clearly hold more depth than others, I was shocked at how many moons I was able to find in the Sand Kingdom after about 4 hours of running around just in that location. And some of the kingdoms have different states depending on whether you defeated the boss or completed a certain special event that will open up even more secret power moons to collect. I don't want to spoil anything, but the new Donk City event is probably the highlight of the game. It's just fantastic. For everything new that Super Mario Odyssey brings to the table, it's also constantly reminding you of its legacy, by referencing previous games in the series, but none more so than the NES Mario games that make an appearance in certain levels hidden in the environment. Some of these old school mini levels are very challenging, especially one in particular you'll get to see after completing the game. If there are any gripes I have about Super Mario Odyssey, it's got to be the fact that motion controls still exist. This may not be an issue for others, but I really don't like using them, and especially don't like that there isn't a button alternative for some of the abilities that motion controls grant you. For instance, throwing Mario's cap directly up and down from him aren't possible at all as far as I can tell without flicking the controllers. And while the amazingly useful spin throw that circles Mario can be done by rotating the sticks, it doesn't work consistently. It does work more consistently by doing the motion control version, but that's still not activated fast enough, so I'm often taking unnecessary damage because of this mechanic. And if I decide to use the Switch in the handheld mode with the controllers attached to it, it becomes far more difficult to do any of the motion actions, and almost impossible to do that spin throw when I need it. With that being said, I highly recommend playing this game if you're a fan of the series, or even if you're a lapsed fan like I was. The ending sequence is probably one of the best experiences I've had in a Mario game, and the additional things that unlock once it's done will be a joy to any longtime Super Mario fans. So, are any of you guys playing Super Mario Odyssey? How are you liking it so far, and is it living up to any of the expectations you've had from Nintendo? Let us know. We're listening.